A bullied teen defended a new kid, never suspecting he was a famous actor scouting an unlikely hero. That's what crossed Elijah Morgan's mind as he pressed a tissue against his bleeding lip, the metallic taste of blood mixing with the salt of his tears. Another day, another beating. The clock on the wall of the boys' bathroom ticked rhythmically, counting down the final minutes before the bell would force him back into the battlefield of high school hallways. 16 years old, with shoulders already carrying the weight of 1,000 insults, Elijah studied his reflection in the cracked mirror. Lanky frame, wire-rimmed glasses perpetually sliding down his nose, and a constellation of acne across his forehead that no amount of medicated wash seemed to touch. The bruise blooming beneath his left eye would be impossible to hide from his mother tonight. "It's fine," he whispered to himself, the bathroom's fluorescent lights flickering as if in disagreement. Just 7 more months until senior year, then 1 more year after that. The mantra had sustained him through sophomore year. Now halfway through junior year, the words were beginning to ring hollow. Outside, Westlake High School continued its daily rhythm. The popular kids claiming their territory in the cafeteria, teachers pretending not to notice the hierarchies that ruled the hallways, and Elijah's tormentors, led by football captain Damon Walsh, hunting for their next opportunity to remind Elijah of his place. His phone vibrated. A text from his mother. "Don't forget, working double shift tonight. Leftover pasta in fridge. Love you, E." Elijah's heart sank a little deeper. Another night alone in their small apartment. His mother tried, God, how she tried, working endless hours as a hospital nurse since his father walked out 3 years ago. But her absence left a void that all the "I love you" texts in the world couldn't fill. The bell rang, jarring him back to reality. Lunch period was ending. Elijah gathered his courage along with his backpack, shoulders hunched as if the fabric could shield him from what waited outside. The first hint that something was different came the following Monday. Whispers rippled through homeroom like wind through tall grass. A new student. Mid-year transfers were uncommon at Westlake, especially in February when most of the school year was already behind them. "I heard he's from California," Emma Chen whispered to her friend at the desk beside Elijah's. "My cousin said his parents bought the old Thornberry house on Maple Street." Another voice chimed in. "You know, the one with the..." The classroom door opened, and Mrs. Hargrove entered with someone trailing behind her. The room fell silent. "Class, we have a new student joining us today. This is Lucas Reed. He's transferred from Los Angeles, and I expect you all to make him feel welcome." Elijah glanced up, then found himself staring. Lucas Reed was nothing like he expected. No designer clothes or confident swagger. Instead, he stood awkwardly at the front of the class in faded jeans and a plain gray hoodie that seemed a size too large. Dark curls fell across his forehead, partially hiding eyes that darted nervously around the room. A faded backpack hung from one shoulder, the strap clutched tightly in his hand. "There's an empty seat next to Elijah," Mrs. Hargrove said, pointing toward the back of the classroom. "Elijah, raise your hand, please." Elijah reluctantly lifted his hand, feeling the weight of 27 stares as Lucas made his way down the aisle. The new kid slid into the desk beside him with a quiet, "Hey," that was barely audible. Up close, there was something familiar about him that Elijah couldn't place, like a face from a half-forgotten dream. "Hi," Elijah muttered back, before quickly returning his attention to his notebook, already knowing how this would go. The new kid would eventually figure out Elijah's status as the school's favorite punching bag and distance himself accordingly. Best not to get attached. But when the bell rang 50 minutes later, Lucas turned to him. "Could you maybe show me where the math wing is? My schedule says I have calculus next, but this place is like a maze." Elijah hesitated. Helping the new kid meant being seen with him. Being seen with him meant potentially painting a target on Lucas's back too. "It's okay if you can't," Lucas added quickly, misreading Elijah's hesitation. Something in the way Lucas's shoulders slumped made Elijah change his mind. "No, it's fine. I have pre-calc in the same hall. Follow me." They walked in silence through the crowded corridor, Elijah leading them along the least populated route, a survival tactic he'd perfected over years of avoiding Damon and his friends. Lucas kept pace beside him, eyes taking in everything with an intensity that seemed almost studied. "So Los Angeles, huh?" Elijah finally asked as they approached the math wing. "Must be boring here compared to California." Lucas smiled slightly. "LA isn't all it's cracked up to be. Too many people trying to be something they're not." He paused at the doorway to the calculus classroom. "Thanks for the guide service. See you around?" Elijah nodded, though he doubted it. New kids were quickly sorted into the school's social hierarchy, and Lucas would soon learn where Elijah belonged in that system. He was wrong. The cafeteria at Westlake High was a microcosm of teenage society, complete with its clearly defined territories and unwritten rules. Elijah usually ate alone at a corner table near the emergency exit. Headphones in, book open, invisible by choice after years of being invisible by decree. He was halfway through his peanut butter sandwich when a tray clattered onto the table across from him. "This seat taken?" Lucas asked, already sliding into the chair. Elijah blinked in surprise. No. But you probably don't want to." "Great," Lucas interrupted, unwrapping a burrito from the cafeteria line. "Because the guy who was showing me around earlier ditched me the second Damon Walsh walked by." He took a bite and immediately grimaced. "What is this supposed to be?" "It tastes like cardboard wrapped in sadness." Despite himself, Elijah laughed. "Welcome to public school cuisine. The pizza's safer." Lucas pushed the tray away with dramatic disgust. "Noted for tomorrow." He nodded toward Elijah's book. "Asimov? You like sci-fi?" The conversation flowed with unexpected ease after that. Lucas had read most of the same books, watched the same obscure documentaries, and shared Elijah's fascination with astronomy. By the time the bell rang, Elijah had spoken more words in 40 minutes than he typically did in a day. "Same place tomorrow?" Lucas asked as they gathered their things. Elijah wanted to warn him, to explain that being seen with Elijah Morgan was social suicide, that Damon would eventually notice, that Lucas still had a chance to establish himself somewhere higher in the social order. Instead, he just nodded. 2 weeks passed, and against all odds, Lucas continued to seek out Elijah's company. They fell into a rhythm, meeting before first period, eating lunch together, sometimes walking part of the way home, while discussing everything from quantum physics to the philosophical implications of time travel. Lucas was smart, intimidatingly so, but never made Elijah feel lesser for not understanding something. For the first time in years, Elijah found himself looking forward to school. The bullying didn't stop. Damon still shoved him into lockers when teachers weren't looking, but having someone to talk to made it bearable. More than bearable. Some days it almost felt like he belonged. "You never talk about yourself," Elijah noted one day as they sat on the bleachers after school, watching the track team practice. "Like, what did your parents do in LA? Why'd you move here?" A shadow crossed Lucas's face. "My dad's in entertainment. Mom's not in the picture." He picked at a loose thread on his sleeve. "We move around a lot for his work." "It's not very interesting." "More interesting than here," Elijah countered. "Nothing ever happens in Westlake." Lucas smiled enigmatically. "You'd be surprised." Before Elijah could press further, a commotion near the field caught their attention. Freshman Tyler Ross, a skinny, red-headed boy who'd started at Westlake just a month before Lucas, was frantically gathering scattered papers while Damon and 2 other football players laughed. "What a freak!" Damon called loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Drawing your little cartoon people won't make you less of a loser, Ross." Elijah tensed, the familiar sick feeling rising in his stomach. He knew he should look away, should pretend not to see. That was the unwritten rule of survival at Westlake. Mind your own business when Damon was involved. But then Damon ripped one of the drawings in half, and Tyler made a sound so wounded that something in Elijah snapped. Before he could think better of it, he was on his feet. "Elijah," Lucas warned, grabbing his arm. "Don't." Elijah shook him off, adrenaline and 3 years of accumulated rage propelling him down the bleachers. He'd regret this. He knew he would. But he couldn't watch another kid become what he had become. Someone who flinched at sudden movements and calculated the safest routes through his own school. "Leave him alone," Elijah said, his voice steadier than he felt as he reached the group. Damon turned slowly, surprise giving way to delight at this unexpected gift. "Well, look who grew a backbone. Morgan the martyr, coming to save another loser." He stepped closer, using his 5-inch height advantage to loom over Elijah. "You sure you want to do this?" Every instinct screamed at Elijah to back down, to apologize, to run. Instead, he bent down and picked up one of Tyler's scattered drawings. A remarkably good sketch of a superhero in mid-flight. "These are actually really good," he said to Tyler, ignoring Damon completely. "You're talented." Damon's face darkened. "I'm talking to you, Morgan, and I'm choosing not to listen." Elijah replied, surprising himself with his own boldness as he continued helping Tyler gather his artwork. "Crazy concept, I know." The blow came exactly as expected. Damon's fist connecting with Elijah's stomach, driving the air from his lungs. He doubled over, gasping, as Tyler scrambled backward in terror. That's just a sample, Damon hissed, grabbing Elijah by the collar. After school tomorrow. Behind the gym. We'll see how brave you are then. That's enough. The voice was so cold, so commanding, that everyone froze. Lucas stood at the edge of their circle, his stance completely transformed. Gone was the awkward new kid. In his place stood someone who radiated such quiet authority that even Damon's grip on Elijah's collar loosened. "Stay out of this, Reed," Damon warned, but there was a note of uncertainty in his voice. Lucas stepped closer, his eyes never leaving Damon's. "I said that's enough. Let him go. Now." Something passed between them, some silent communication that Elijah couldn't decipher. To his astonishment, Damon released him, stepping back with a forced laugh. "Whatever. He's not worth it anyway." Damon looked between them. "This isn't over, Morgan." With a final glare, he and his friends stalked away, leaving an impossible silence in their wake. Tyler gathered the last of his drawings, mumbling a quiet "thanks" before fleeing the scene. Elijah's legs gave out, and he sank to the grass, still struggling to breathe properly. Lucas crouched beside him, concern etched across his features. "Are you okay?" Elijah nodded, though he was far from okay. "How did you do that? Make him back down?" Lucas shrugged, suddenly looking uncomfortable. People like Damon are all bluster. They fold when someone stands up to them with confidence. He helped Elijah to his feet. "That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen, by the way." "Definitely the stupidest," Elijah agreed, wincing as he straightened. "He's going to kill me tomorrow." "No, he won't," Lucas said with strange certainty. "Come on, let's get you home." That night, Elijah sat at his kitchen table with an ice pack pressed to his ribs, trying to finish his history homework before his mother returned from her shift. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car passing on the street below. His phone buzzed with a text from Lucas. "You okay?" "Fine," he typed back. "Just contemplating my imminent death tomorrow." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. "Finally, no one's dying tomorrow. Trust me." Elijah wanted to ask what that meant, but before he could respond, the apartment door opened and his mother entered, still in her scrubs, exhaustion written in the lines around her eyes. "Hey, sweetie," she said, dropping her bag and kicking off her shoes. "Sorry I'm so late. Mrs. Geller's chemo wasn't going well, and I couldn't." She stopped abruptly, eyes narrowing as she noticed the ice pack. What happened?" "I tripped during gym." Elijah lied, the words bitter on his tongue. He hated lying to her, but the truth would only add to her worries. She studied him for a long moment, clearly not believing him but too tired to press. "There's something I need to talk to you about," she said, sinking into the chair across from him. "I got a call today, from a TV producer." Elijah blinked, confused by this unexpected turn. "A what?" "A producer, for some teen drama show. They're filming in town for the next few months and need local extras. Students. They're paying good money, $200 a day." She reached for his hand. "They specifically asked about you, Elijah." "Me? Why would they ask about me?" "I don't know. The woman said someone recommended you." She squeezed his fingers. "It would help with the bills and look good on college applications too." Elijah's mind reeled. None of this made sense. Who would recommend him for anything? Wait, when do they need to know? "They're holding auditions this weekend at the community center. Saturday morning." She smiled tiredly. "Just think about it, okay?" He nodded, though his thoughts were already elsewhere, fixed on tomorrow and what awaited him behind the gym after school. Elijah barely slept. By morning, dark circles shadowed his eyes and his stomach churned with dread. He considered faking illness, but that would only postpone the inevitable. Better to face it head on. He was retrieving books from his locker when Lucas appeared beside him, looking equally tired. "Skip last period," Lucas said without preamble. "Meet me in the parking lot at 2:15. "What? Why?" "Just trust me. Please." Before Elijah could question him further, Lucas was gone, disappearing into the stream of students heading to first period. The day crawled by in excruciating slow motion. Elijah couldn't focus on anything his teacher said, his mind cycling through increasingly violent scenarios of what Damon might do to him. By lunch, the anxiety had killed his appetite completely. Lucas was oddly quiet during lunch, checking his phone repeatedly and sending texts to someone Elijah couldn't see. "Are you going to tell me what's going on?" Elijah finally asked. Lucas pocketed his phone. "After school. Just promise you'll meet me. And miss my scheduled beating?" "Tempting." "Elijah." Lucas's voice was deadly serious. 2:15. A parking lot. Be there. The intensity in his eyes made Elijah nod despite his reservations. At exactly 2:13, Elijah slipped out of his history class with a hastily fabricated excuse about a dentist appointment. His heart pounded as he made his way to the parking lot, half expecting Damon to leap out from behind every corner. Lucas was waiting beside a sleek black SUV with tinted windows. He motioned Elijah over urgently. "Get in! Whose car is this?" Elijah asked, hesitating beside the passenger door. "Just get in. I'll explain everything." Against his better judgment, Elijah climbed into the vehicle. The interior smelled of new leather, and classical music played softly from hidden speakers. In the driver's seat sat a middle-aged man in a suit who nodded politely before pulling away from the curb. "What the hell, Lucas?" Elijah demanded once they were moving. "Who is this?" "Where are we going?" Lucas took a deep breath. "First, you're not in trouble. Second, I haven't been entirely honest with you." He glanced at the driver, who kept his eyes fixed on the road. "My name isn't Lucas Reed. It's Lucas Reeves." The name hung in the air between them, waiting for recognition. When Elijah showed none, Lucas sighed. "Lucas Reeves," he repeated. "From Midnight Academy. And the edge of everything?" Slowly, impossibly, the pieces clicked into place. The vague familiarity when they first met. The way Lucas had made Damon back down. The mysterious call about TV extras. "You're an actor," Elijah said numbly. "You're famous." Lucas, or rather Lucas Reeves, teenage heartthrob and star of Hollywood's biggest young adult franchise, winced. "Yeah, I am." The SUV turned onto the highway, heading away from town. Elijah's mind raced, trying to process this revelation. "I don't understand. Why are you at Westlake? Why did you pretend to be normal?" Lucas ran a hand through his curls. A nervous gesture Elijah had seen dozens of times before, now cast in an entirely new light. "I'm researching a role. For a film about high school bullying and its long-term effects, my director wanted authenticity, real experiences, not Hollywood's version of teen life." He met Elijah's eyes. "I've been at 6 different schools in the past year, observing, learning. Westlake is the last one." Elijah felt like he'd been punched all over again. "So I was. Research? Our friendship was just you studying the sad bullied kid for your movie?" "No," Lucas said quickly. "God, no. That's not..." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "The research was why I came to Westlake. It's not why I became your friend." The driver cleared his throat. "We're almost there, Mr. Reeves. Where are you taking me?" Elijah asked, suddenly aware of how far they'd traveled from school. "Somewhere safe," Lucas answered. "Somewhere Damon Walsh can't find you while we sort this out." The SUV exited the highway and wound through unfamiliar streets before pulling up to a security gate. After a brief exchange with a guard, they proceeded up a long driveway to a modern house nestled among pine trees. "Welcome to home base," Lucas said as they stepped out of the vehicle. "Temporary home anyway. The production company rented it for the duration of my research phase." Elijah followed him inside, struggling to reconcile the Lucas he knew with this new reality. The house was minimally but expensively furnished, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a small lake. A woman in a crisp blazer sat at a dining table covered in papers, typing rapidly on a laptop. She looked up as they entered. "Lucas! Thank God. The director's been calling every 20 minutes. Her eyes shifted to Elijah. "Is this him?" "Elijah, this is Meredith, my agent," Lucas explained. "Meredith Elijah Morgan." She stood, extending a hand. "The boy who defended the bullied freshman. Lucas has told us all about you." Elijah shook her hand automatically, still feeling like he'd stepped into an alternate reality. "I don't understand what's happening." Lucas gestured toward the living room. "Let's sit. I owe you a proper explanation." Once they were settled on opposite ends of a pristine white sofa, Lucas leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "The movie I'm researching is called Invisible. It's about a kid who's been bullied for years and finds the courage to stand up, not for himself, but for someone else." Lucas's eyes were intent on Elijah's face. "Sound familiar?" "You set me up," Elijah said, the realization dawning slowly. "Tyler, that whole scene with Damon. You orchestrated it to see what I'd do." "No." Lucas looked genuinely horrified. "God, no. Tyler really is a freshman who really does draw. Damon really is a jerk who picks on vulnerable kids. None of that was staged." He ran both hands through his hair. "But I did hope. I'd been watching you, Elijah, for weeks before I enrolled. I saw how you survived by making yourself small, invisible. I saw your intelligence, your compassion, even when you tried to hide it. You were watching me? That's not creepy at all, Elijah said, anger rising through his confusion. It's research, Elijah. For a character inspired by kids like you, kids who suffer in silence because the system fails them. Lucas's voice softened. But then yesterday happened. You defended Tyler when no one else would, including me. You stood up to the guy who's been tormenting you for years. That wasn't research anymore. That was remarkable. Elijah looked away, uncomfortable with the admiration in Lucas's voice. It was stupid. And now Damon's going to beat me to a pulp when I go back. No, he won't, Lucas said firmly. That's partly why I brought you here. Damon Walsh won't be a problem anymore. What does that mean? Lucas smiled slightly. Let's just say his father received some interesting information about Damon's behavior from an anonymous source, along with video evidence that could get him expelled and cost him his football scholarship. He's being handled. Elijah stared at him. You recorded him? Is that even legal? Public space. One-party consent state. Lucas shrugged. The benefits of having a legal team on retainer. The casual way he referenced resources, Elijah couldn't begin to imagine having access to created a sudden chasm between them. A stark reminder of their different worlds. So what happens now? Elijah asked, feeling hollow. You've got your research. You've played hero and saved the bullied kid. Story over, right? You go back to Hollywood, and I go back to being invisible. Pain flashed across Lucas's face. Is that what you think this was? A game? I don't know what to think. You lied to me for weeks, pretended to be someone you're not, made me believe. Elijah cut himself off, not wanting to admit how much Lucas's friendship had meant to him. Made you believe what? Lucas pressed. That someone actually saw me. Elijah finished quietly. Not the bullied kid, not the charity case. Just me. Lucas moved closer on the sofa. I did see you, Elijah. The real you. The lies were about my identity, not about our friendship. He hesitated. When I defended Tyler Ross yesterday, I wasn't acting. I was following your lead. Your courage inspired me. Elijah wanted to believe him, but doubt had taken root. Why tell me now? Why not just disappear back to your real life? Because I want to offer you something. Lucas nodded toward Meredith, who approached with a folder. The TV show your mom mentioned is real, but it's not extras they're looking for. It's you specifically. Meredith handed Elijah the folder. Inside was a contract for a substantial sum of money, more than his mother made in months, along with a brief description of consultant duties for the film Invisible. We want you as a creative consultant, Lucas explained. Your experiences, your perspective, they're invaluable to making this film authentic. And there's more. He took a deep breath. The director wants to meet you. He thinks you might have potential. As an actor. Elijah nearly dropped the folder. That's ridiculous. I'm not an actor. Neither was I until someone gave me a chance. Lucas countered. Look, you don't have to decide right now. Take the folder home. Talk to your mom. Think about it. And if I say no, if I don't want anything to do with your movie or your world, something like hurt flickered in Lucas's eyes. Then I'll respect that. We'll drive you home and you never have to see me again. He paused. But I hope you don't say no. Not just for the movie's sake, but because I meant what I said before. You're my friend, Elijah. Probably the only real friend I've made in years. The raw honesty in his voice made Elijah's anger falter. I need time to process this. Of course, Lucas agreed. Can I at least drive you home? We can talk more on the way if you want, or sit in silence. Your choice. Elijah nodded slowly, clutching the folder like a shield. The ride back to Westlake was quiet. Lucas had exchanged the SUV and driver for a less conspicuous sedan, which he drove himself. Afternoon had faded into evening by the time they pulled up outside Elijah's apartment building. For what it's worth, Lucas said as Elijah reached for the door handle. I'm sorry for not being honest from the beginning, but I'm not sorry we became friends. Elijah paused, studying the face he thought he knew. I don't even know who you really are. Yes, you do, Lucas insisted. Lucas Reeves, Lucas Reed, the name doesn't matter. The person who talked astronomy with you for hours, who laughed at your terrible science jokes, who shared his lunch when you forgot yours. That's the real me. More real than the person on movie posters. The sincerity in his voice made something in Elijah's chest tighten. I'll think about the offer, he said finally. That's all I can promise right now. Lucas nodded. That's fair. Take all the time you need. Elijah stepped out of the car, the folder tucked under his arm. Before closing the door, he looked back. Why me? Out of all the bullied kids in all the schools you visited, why pick me for this? Lucas smiled, the same warm, genuine smile that had made Elijah trust him in the first place. Because when it mattered most, you chose courage over safety. Not for yourself, but for someone else. That makes you a hero in my book, Elijah Morgan. An unlikely one maybe, but a hero nonetheless. With those words hanging between them, Elijah closed the car door and watched Lucas drive away, the tail lights disappearing around the corner. His mother was already home, pacing the small living room. She rushed to him the moment he walked through the door. Where have you been? The school called when you missed last period. I've been worried sick. She stopped, noticing the folder in his hands. What's that? Elijah set the folder on the coffee table and sank onto the couch. Mom, we need to talk. About that TV show. About everything. For the next hour, he told her everything. About the bullying he'd hidden from her for years. About Lucas Reeves and his undercover research. About the offer to work on the movie. He showed her the contract, watching her eyes widen at the figures listed. When he finished, she sat beside him, tears tracking silently down her cheeks. Why didn't you tell me? She whispered. About the bullying. About how bad it's been. You have enough to worry about, he said. I didn't want to add to your stress. She pulled him into a fierce hug. That's not how this works. I'm the parent. It's my job to worry about you. Pulling back, she wiped her eyes. As for this offer, it's entirely your choice. The money would help, yes, but that's not a reason to do something this big. This has to be your decision. Elijah stared at the folder. I don't know if I belong in that world. Maybe not. She agreed. But maybe that world needs someone like you in it. Someone real with real experiences. She squeezed his hand. You stood up for that boy when no one else would. That took tremendous courage, Elijah. The kind of courage I always knew you had. Her words echoed Lucas's so closely that something shifted inside him. A recognition that perhaps they both saw something in him he hadn't been able to see in himself. 3 days passed with no word from Lucas. Elijah returned to school to find rumors swirling about Damon's sudden, unexplained suspension and equally sudden transfer to a military academy upstate. Tyler Ross sought him out at lunch to thank him again, showing him new drawings with a confidence he hadn't possessed before. On the 4th day, as Elijah walked home, a now familiar sedan pulled alongside him. The window rolled down, revealing Lucas, the real Lucas Reeves, no longer trying to blend in. His hair was styled differently, his clothes clearly expensive, but his smile was the same. Can we talk? He asked. Elijah hesitated, then nodded, climbing into the passenger seat. They drove to a small park at the edge of town, deserted in the late afternoon chill. Sitting on a bench overlooking a frozen pond, breath-forming clouds in the cold air, Lucas spoke first. The director loved my report on the research phase. Pre-production starts next month. He glanced sideways at Elijah. Have you thought about the offer? Elijah nodded. I have questions first. Ask me anything. This movie, will it exploit kids like me? Turn bullying into entertainment? Lucas shook his head firmly. Just the opposite. It's meant to create empathy, to show the real impact of bullying from the perspective of those who experience it. Not simplified black and white villains and victims, but the complex reality. He paused. That's why we need you, to keep us honest. And the acting part, was that just a line to get me to agree? No, Lucas said emphatically. The director saw the security footage from school, the confrontation with Damon. He said you had a natural presence, an authenticity. He wants you to audition for a supporting role. He turned fully toward Elijah. But even if you don't want to act, the consultant position stands. Elijah looked out over the frozen pond, watching a pair of birds land on the ice. I talked to my mom. She says it's my decision. And? What have you decided? I'll be your consultant, Elijah said slowly. But I need to finish school here. No special treatment, no Hollywood perks. Just normal life until graduation. Relief and happiness spread across Lucas's face. Absolutely. We can work around your schedule completely. And the audition, Elijah took a deep breath. I'll try, just try. No promises. Lucas grinned. That's all anyone can ask. He extended his hand. Partners? Elijah looked at the offered hand, then up at the face of the person who had crashed into his life and changed everything. The person who had seen something in him worth believing in when he couldn't see it himself. He took Lucas's hand. Partners, Average 6 months later, the premiere of Invisible wasn't scheduled until the following year, but the first table read had the entire production buzzing. Elijah sat beside Lucas in the studio conference room, still feeling out of place despite the months of preparation. Nervous? Lucas whispered as the director welcomed everyone. Terrified, Elijah admitted. His role wasn't large, just a few scenes, but it felt monumental to him. "You've got this," Lucas assured him. "Just remember what I told you. Be authentic. That's your superpower." The read-through began, professionals with years of experience bringing the script to life around the table. When Elijah's first line approached, his heart hammered so loudly he was certain everyone could hear it. Taking a deep breath, he channeled the feelings from that day on the field. The anger, the fear, the unexpected courage that had risen through it all. His voice rang out clear and steady, filling the room with an emotional truth that silenced even the whispering assistants in the corner. When he finished his scene, the director nodded appreciatively. "That's exactly what we're looking for, Elijah." Exactly. Pride bloomed in his chest as Lucas bumped his shoulder supportively. Later, as they walked to the parking lot, Lucas said, "You know, they're already talking about expanding your role." The producers were impressed. Elijah shook his head, still not entirely comfortable with praise. "One step at a time." "Fair enough," Lucas agreed. "But whatever happens with the movie, I want you to know something." He stopped walking, turning to face Elijah fully. "That day at school when you stood up for Tyler, that wasn't just research to me. It was a wake-up call. I've spent years playing heroes on screen while hiding behind my team in real life. You showed me what real courage looks like." Elijah felt his cheeks warm. "I was terrified that day." "That's what makes it brave," Lucas insisted. "Doing the right thing despite the fear, not in the absence of it." He smiled. "You know, in all the schools I visited, all the research I did, I was looking for an unlikely hero to inspire my character. I never expected to find a real one, or a real friend." The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot as they resumed walking. Elijah thought about the path that had led him here. From a bullied teen who made himself invisible to survive, to someone whose voice and experiences would help shape how others saw the world. It wasn't a path he could have imagined for himself, yet somehow it felt right. A bullied teen defended a new kid, never suspecting he was a famous actor scouting an unlikely hero. Elijah mused, echoing the thought that had crossed his mind that day in the bathroom, now transformed into something new. "Turns out the unlikely hero was inside me all along." Lucas laughed. "That's corny enough to be a movie tagline." "Maybe it should be," Elijah replied with a smile. "After all, sometimes the corniest lines contain the most truth." As they reached Lucas's car, Elijah looked back at the studio building, a place that had once seemed as distant as another planet, now a place where his voice mattered, where he mattered. Sometimes the greatest transformations begin with the smallest acts of courage. Sometimes defending someone else is the first step toward finding your own strength. And sometimes an unlikely hero is exactly what the world needs most.